over a second and a half. But I guarantee you, Lee, all she is thinking about is what she needs to do in the track, and that's what makes her the best women's bobsled pilot in the world.
Yeah, for me growing up, sports was always a passion of mine. It's always where I felt the most comfortable, physically, mentally, where I could kind of have a bit of a release and what felt safest and best.
Kaillie Humphries is an Olympic powerhouse with 4 medals from 4 different games.
The 5-time world champion is in command.
She was able to achieve many of her dreams because she stayed in sync with her body.
It is gold for Team USA and Kaillie Humphries. It's a golden moment.
Until it came to having a baby.
My body's always responded sport-wise. And because I have this awareness of it and how to make it operate and function physically at its best, I felt pretty confident going in that it was going to be an easy process, or that I had all the tools. And I did have all the tools, but it definitely wasn't an easy process.
When Kaillie and her husband Travis decided they wanted to have a baby, they found out that it wasn't going to be as easy as they thought.
Kaillie was diagnosed with stage 4 endometriosis, which was blocking her fallopian tubes, putting her at higher risk for ectopic pregnancies. That's a potentially deadly condition in which a fertilized egg attaches outside the uterus.
She knew that in order to become a mom, she would need to go through IVF, short for in vitro fertilization. So Kaillie and her husband went through nearly 3 years undergoing treatment to try to get pregnant, all while competing at an elite level.
It was hell.
My new favorite Olympian is brought to you by Acura, proud partner of Team USA. Kaillie Humphries is one of, if not the, biggest names in bobsled. The 3-time Olympic champion has an impressive list of accomplishments, including winning the first Olympic gold medal in monobob in 2022.
Kaillie Humphries is an Olympic champion again, but the first ever monobob Olympic champ.
After years of being known as Olympic champion, Kaillie wanted to add mom to her resume. So she and her husband started the process of trying for a baby, something they thought would be pretty straightforward.
Just minus the condom and you're fine.
But after years of trying with no positive pregnancy test, it was becoming clear that it wasn't fine.
There was a good couple years before 2021 where we had tried unsuccessfully to have kids, but we just assumed it was stress, that the timing was off, ovulation was off. It could have been anything.
It wasn't until Kaillie went in to check a completely unrelated issue that she learned why.
I had a routine hip MRI for some sport imaging, and I found a cyst on one of my ovaries, and it needed to be removed. When they went in to remove the cyst, that's when they found the endometriosis.
Endometriosis is a condition that causes uterine tissue to grow outside of the uterus. Oftentimes, that extra growth causes painful scarring and can actually fuse tissues and organs together, impacting not just the uterus, but the ovaries, fallopian tubes, and the entire pelvis.
It just wasn't happening for us. And then roll around, we're a year out, 2 out from the games. Okay, we're going to make sure that we use protection and we're going to focus on the Olympics in 2022. Fast forward, I found out I have endometriosis. That led to, because of the stage 4 diagnosis, I knew I was going to have to go through IVF.
After years of being at the top of her sport, Kaillie had to make a choice. Should she continue to put her family on hold for bobsled, or should she risk it all to start a family?
I'm not young, and I definitely put off becoming a parent selfishly because I wanted to focus on my career. And there was always something within my career as I went through. We kind of work in 4-year cycles, but each 4 years was always something different. And from 18 to 22, I was very aware of fertility in general. I did one of those little at-home tests, and it was like, yeah, your fertility is great, egg quality is okay. And so I felt confident pushing it off. Naively, that was not smart.
Kaillie was 37 when she and her husband Travis decided to go all in on IVF, but they quickly learned that IVF is not a magic wand. It would take an enormous toll on the couple, physically, emotionally, and financially.
Kaillie says the first round of IVF alone cost $15,000, half of her yearly stipend for being a national team athlete.
So as soon as the Olympics in 2022 were done, we knew IVF was going to have to be on our radar. So we started looking into what what that would mean, how that would go, where we were going to start this process, insurance, is it covered, is it not covered, all of the investigation parts that we can look into.
And obviously our story is a little bit unique because she was going through fertility treatments while she was still competing. The way that, of course, in our perfect scenario was once the 2022 Olympics were over, we were going to do an egg retrieval. We were going to do implantation. She was going to be pregnant within a few months. Everything was going to be groovy. Cool.
That's Travis, Kaillie's husband. He says once they knew they'd need IVF, winning competitions became even more important because they needed prize money to pay for their fertility treatments.
In order to effectively financially put us in a position to do it, she just had to go out and win a world championship medal. Now, mind you, she had just won an Olympic gold medal, but that was last year. This is this year. And so the whole season was do well enough so we can afford to try to have a baby, which is a really, really weird thing to admit that that's what we were doing. But at the end of the day, that's what we're doing. And she did. She won 2 that year. She got second in monobob, third in two-woman. So she did it, and I think that's the tricky thing about Kaillie is she does things that are so wild, yet she does them generally really, really well. And so the fact that they are so hard and wild, they don't seem crazy because she's still successful at the level she is. And that's part of her magic, I guess.
Kaillie and Travis did 2 rounds of IVF. That first year, which left them hopeful with a handful of embryos and a scheduling problem.
Now we're into October, and the choice became, do I go back to sport because I only get 1 year out away from sport, and that's the year you're going to be pregnant, without losing world ranking, without losing insurance, without losing my monthly stipend, without losing my position within sport and having to start again from ground zero. We decided at that point to put a pause. The 2 rounds of IVF took a big toll on me mentally and physically.
The IVF process can be grueling. Patients take weeks of shots to mature as many eggs as possible. The eggs are then surgically removed and fertilized in a petri dish before being frozen or implanted back into the woman. In a best case scenario, 1 round of IVF, from egg retrieval and fertilization to transfer and follow-ups, can take about 6 to 8 weeks. Then, once they get a positive pregnancy test, there's another 6 weeks of treatment. So if everything goes exactly right, and it often doesn't, women face months of hormones and doctor's appointments. Then add a busy training and competition schedule to that, and it can seem next to impossible to juggle it all.
And now, just for a little perspective, during this time while she's juggling injections and fluctuating hormones and ultrasounds, Kaillie was still competing, and not just competing, she was crushing it. Here's what her husband remembers.
In January, the year after the games, was okay, we have to start this medicine. We're reading the instructions and watching the YouTube video on how do you do this medicine, and you jab it in her butt, and you're going, did we do that right? Was it the right one? Was it the right amount? What's it going to do? What's it not going to do? And so that was the one that really kicked her into the chemical menopause. And so then all of a sudden we'll be sitting there. We were in Latvia at that time, and she would just start having hot flashes at the dinner table.
I'm trying to compete against 22-year-olds in the world's best, having full hot flashes. I'm -40 outside. I'm taking my jacket off. I'm sweating, trying to walk tracks and compete. And just, we all know, hormones fluctuate, and now it's huge extremes. And I hadn't ever competed with that happening to that extreme.
And this is Kaillie Humphries of the USA. First time ever racing in Sigulda.
And then, of course, that week she goes out and sets a track record in monobob.
She needs to be clean out of 15 over the brow. She is cleaner. She's cleaner than anybody. So 3rd best speed. Again, 900s away, and a new track record, 52.78.
Kaillie finished 1st overall in the International Bobsleigh and Skeleton Federation's 2023 rankings for women's monobob, scoring her 100th podium finish in a major international bobsled competition.
We went from 900s in front to 2100s in front. That is a very happy Kaillie Humphries.
Many families choose to keep their IVF journeys secret, private, since it can be such a roller coaster of hope and then disappointment. But as an Olympian, Kaillie didn't have a choice to keep that journey between herself, her husband, and her medical team.
That's right, because due to the drug testing policies, she had to get permission to take her IVF medications.
You really start to question what's worth it. And that, I think that's a crappy place to be when you go, why are we fighting this? We're fighting with people that honestly don't care about her goal, whether she competes or whether we have a baby.
I think sport and the IVF process, they mimic each other. The tools you need to get through one are the exact tools you need to become and get through an Olympics and be the best in the other. You're chasing a dream that you don't know will ever come true. And it's this feeling of control and lack of control at the same time. There's things you can do, but you have no control over the outcome and what will happen because it's doctors, it's nurses. For me in sport, it's other competitors, it's the track, it's weather. At the same point, it was hard to go through this and have my body respond every single time in sport and have it not respond going through the IVF process.
The U.S. Anti-Doping Agency, or USADA, says they're working to make this an easier process for athletes who are trying to start a family. But in the meantime, athletic agencies are forced to try to protect sport integrity with a growing roster of athletes who are seeking fertility treatments. Here's Dr. Matt Fedorik, Chief Science Officer at USADA.
Athletes that are subject to USADA's drug testing rules are responsible for ensuring that they follow the WADA, or the World Anti-Doping Agency, prohibited list. And there's a process. We recognize that athletes may need certain prohibited substances or methods for medical conditions. So there's a process by which they can get permission to use those. USADA regularly helps guide athletes through that process so that they don't run afoul of the rules.
When we think of anti-doping, there are a few banned drugs that probably come to mind: steroids, stimulants, human growth hormone. But because many fertility drugs impact hormone levels, most are closely monitored and require USADA approval through a therapeutic use exemption, or TUE, a process which can take weeks.
There's really kind of 3 steps. One is that the athlete would check the prohibited list to make sure that they understand whether the drug is prohibited or not. If it was prohibited, they can reach out to USADA to understand how to apply for a TUE. So that process involves going to your doctor and getting a form filled out that specifies the medical condition that you're intending to treat. We have an independent TUE committee made up of physicians that are specialty experts in various areas of medicine. They would evaluate that TUE application and then make a decision on whether to grant a TUE or to deny a TUE. And if a TUE was denied, then USADA is responsible for providing the reasons for that denial. And oftentimes, if the reason is, say, the lack of clinical information, then we would work with the athlete to gather more information in order to be able to make a proper decision on those cases.
The medications, I had to get all my medications cleared because I am a tested athlete. So because of WADA, because of everything, I can't have too high estrogen or testosterone. Everything has to be regulated. The medications that I need for certain medications, I have to get approved before taking them. So everything just takes time and months of time. And so by the end of the 2 egg retrievals, I was like, I'm spent mentally, physically. I need a break. I need to go back to what I know. I need to go back to where I feel sane and what feels comfortable, which is high performance sport.
After a break to compete in 2023, Kaillie went through 3 back-to-back embryo transfers, all of which failed. After switching doctors and going through a 4th transfer, Kaillie and her husband finally got what they'd been hoping for after 3 years of treatments: a positive pregnancy test.
It was long, it was hard. Whether it's IVF, IUI, it's not as simple as you just put an embryo in and it takes. But we got there in the end, and my son is my world now.
Okay, I looked at there was nothing, and I'm like, that's why
I know.
I'm here always my presser, so okay.
Yeah.
I think what it really did was it really it put into perspective what matters, and not that other things don't matter, and not that her going out and winning hopefully 2 more golds in Italy doesn't matter. all that stuff still matters. Just to watch her do it all, it's really, it's a wonderful thing to see and to be a part of. And that's where, probably the luckiest position I'm in, is that I get to watch it all. And then I get to be a part of it. And so it's a constant moment that we get to cherish, whether her racing goes good, bad, or indifferent. We get to be together as a family, and that's the most important part.
Sports regulators are working to find ways to make it easier for athletes who need fertility treatments and want to keep competing in their sport. And that may be a more common reality as the average age of Olympians is trending a little older these days.
One of the ways USADA is doing that is by re-evaluating which fertility drugs require medical approval.
From being able to reduce the burden on athletes and not be intrusive into their personal lives, this is something that we feel that's quite important, and we're continuing to try to advocate for female athletes and making the system easier for them.
For Kaillie, the journey was a lesson in understanding more about her body outside of sports.
It was hard to go through this and have my body respond every single time in sport and have it not respond going through the IVF process. But this was a whole different concept of how my body worked. It wasn't muscles, it wasn't lifting weights or running fast. This is like internal organs and hormones and like linings and follicles and ovaries and stuff that like I have no idea about, didn't go to medical school for. This is not my expertise. So that was definitely a challenge, and I would say more mentally hard than anything, for sure.
Kaillie says that as hard as the IVF journey was while competing, she never expected how hard training for the Milan Cortina Olympics would be after having a baby.
Returning to sport postpartum, so hard. I definitely underestimated this process that I'm currently still in. So trying to get back in shape and be back to an Olympic level, hopefully back to the very best in the world, is kicking my butt real hard. And I underestimated that portion of becoming a mom and the toll that birth and being pregnant and the whole like process of that took a way bigger toll on my system. And I was very naive in that process.
Are we watching bobsleds?
I went into last year knowing I was going to be out of shape, that my body was going to take some time. I was hopeful it wouldn't be that bad. Very first race back, I was a good 4/10 behind, which for some people they might be like, oh, that's nothing. That's like light years away in bobsled. I had to have a lot of grace last year competing with myself, and it taught me a lot. My son's going to be a year and a half come the games, and can I fully recover and be the best in a year and a half? I have no idea, but I'm going to try.
Wherever you see Kaillie competing across the globe or getting ready for a big competition, you can be sure that her son Alden will be close by.
It's definitely a shift, one that I needed. In all fairness, I've been doing this a long time. So I was ready for something different, and I needed a different motivation. And my son is definitely given that. But I wouldn't change it for the world, because I got to live out my dream and become a mom. And so he gets to travel with both of his parents. His mom and his dad were with each other every single day. He comes to the track. He gets to see other Olympic and Paralympic athletes training and achieving their dreams. And so we've chosen to do this together.
But ask Kaillie about parenthood, and here's what she'll say.
Everything I dreamed of. It is amazing, and I absolutely love it. It's not without its challenges, don't get me wrong, but it has met every expectation by far. And I think some of that is because I am older, because I did live out becoming a 3-time Olympic champion before I went into motherhood and that journey. It also added stress and pressure because there was no guarantee it was going to happen because I waited so long. But I think that only has made the process that much easier, because I don't feel like I'm giving anything up from a career side. From a motherhood, I can fully go into it 100%. And my son is my world now. And so it has met every expectation.
Now, as Kaillie is back to competing, her son is growing up to watch her live her dreams and hitting his own infant milestones along the way.
The first time he crawled was on a bed we were in Norway. His first step led into 4 or 5 steps in a row, was at training camp in Phoenix when he was 10 and a half months old.
Woohoo! Yay! Good job.
So that was like with my coach. Everyone was there. Like he went from like, oh, just like 1 step to like now like literally 4 or 5 steps. And 2 hours later, he was taking like 8 or 9 steps all in the same day, walking on grass. So yes, my teammates have been a part of a lot of his first.
He pushes everything around now. Anything that can be pushed, he pushes. And at first we thought, well, that's interesting. Where did he see that? Well, then you think everywhere he's gone, all he's done is see people push bobsled. So, okay, makes pretty good sense. So you think, oh, he won't know anything. And then you realize like, oh no, he knows exactly what's happening. And that was at 6 months old he started seeing that.
Go push in. Push, push, push. Good job.
All right. And when they're not at the track or chasing their toddler, Kaillie and her husband work to make sure other athletes and aspiring parents don't face the same challenges they did. Through their foundation, Trailblaze Her, Kaillie and Travis provide grants and mental health resources to other Olympic and Paralympic athletes going through fertility treatments.
So, which is harder, being a mom or being an Olympian?
They're equally as hard for very different reasons. Being an Olympian, there's the physical aspect where you're depleted physically from like workouts and training, and then the pressure and having a target on your back and having to perform when the world is watching and not making mistakes and trying to be perfect. You don't have to be perfect with a toddler, but now you're trying to keep a kid alive, and you got to make sure that they're fed and they're always on the go, and you get 0 time off into yourself. And then you're gonna have great days, you're gonna have rock bottom days. And I think that that's just part of life. And being a mom, being an Olympian, being able to be both, being able to live out my dreams of both, that's the best thing for sure. Like being able to be a mom as somebody who spent 3 years thinking it was never going to happen or that it couldn't happen realistically, I am forever grateful to have that title. And it's the same when it comes to being an Olympian, being an Olympic champion. It's something that I worked really hard for, that I'm very proud of in a very different way. And so both are an honor. And yeah, being a mom's awesome. It rocks.
And now to hear more about what we can expect from Kaillie Humphries in Milan, we're joined by NBC Olympics senior editor Nick Zaccardi. Nick, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Nick, I can only imagine the process of becoming a mother is challenging enough, even when you aren't training for the Olympics. Are there other standout examples of women who have done extraordinary things at the Olympics after having a baby?
Some of the greatest Olympians in history won gold medals as moms. Going as far back as Dutch track and field athlete Fanny Blankers-Koen, who won 4 gold medals in 1948 as a mother of 2. And the athlete with the most medals in Winter Olympic history, as I'm sure you know, Adam, Norwegian cross-country skier Marit Bjørgen, came back from childbirth in 2015 to win her last 5 Olympic medals in 2018.
Wow, moms are tough. I think that's the lesson from that.
Yeah.
So Nick, we heard about Kaillie's struggles with her fertility treatments, but just in general for a Team USA athlete, like how difficult is it for them to make money and capitalize on that narrow window?
Well, in the US, where Olympic athletes aren't funded by the government like in many other countries, it can be very challenging. And it varies by sport, skill level, and a lot of different factors. Now, the highest level athletes, those who are making Olympic teams, usually get a small monthly stipend from governing bodies, plus benefits like insurance through the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee. But for the cream of the crop, Olympic medalists, they're making most of their money through sponsorships. But Adam can tell you a great story about that, and it involves apples.
Does he has all the dirt on all the athletes?
Yeah, well, what he's talking about is like when I was competing, like I was pretty broke. And so I was like, should I eat or should I go to the gym? And I decided, well, I'll go to the gym. I can just eat when I retire. And so then at the gym, they had this bowl of apples. And so I would go in with like my backpack and I'd shove every apple at the gym into the backpack. And that's how you get free apples.
And this is because like our government is the one that's like not funding and supporting these Olympic programs.
Yeah, all of our like sponsorships, like all of the NGBs, like the governing bodies, they get sponsored through different corporations and stuff that want to help support the athletes, like Nick was talking about. So like all of that funding doesn't come from the government. Other sports, some athletes will represent the police department or they'll join the military, and that's how they'll be funded. But in the United States, there's no government funding. So Nick, this year Kaillie Humphries is going to be facing some new challenges. It's her first Olympics postpartum. What competition is she facing, and what do you think the outlook is for her this year?
Well, since returning from childbirth, Humphries has regularly finished in the top 10 of her international races, which is usually good enough to make an Olympic team. But of course, with her gold medal history, she wants to be finishing higher. She should expect to do so this year, be contending for podiums as she works her way back after maternity leave. Her biggest competition, though, comes from within her own U.S. team. The medals will come down to who makes the fewest mistakes, which is hard to predict in a sport that often comes down to hundredths of a second.
Nick Zaccardi, thank you so much for all your insight.
Thank you very much for having me.
On the next episode of My New Favorite Olympian, this hockey star learned his work ethic from his father, a longtime plumber.
I'd rather be playing hockey every day of the week. He was just busy, coming right from work to taking me to hockey. Just how selfless that was, you know, looking back on it now and having that perspective, how tired he must have been, you know, from working all day, and then just taking me to give me the opportunity to go and pay for ice time for me. He always told me, you know, he had bigger dreams for me, that he wanted more for me.
Get to know Charlie McAvoy on the next episode of My New Favorite Olympian.
This episode of My New Favorite Olympian was produced by NBC Universal Local. Adam Rippon and I, Chase Kane, were your hosts. This episode was written and produced and edited by Janine Doyon. Jeremy Berg served as executive producer. Seth Rubinroyd served as the coordinating producer. D.S. Shen was supervising producer. Motion graphics and design by Aaron Pennell. Miguel Estrada, Alice Haydari, Aaron Pennell, Ray Rodriguez were the production crew. Stephen Dawson was the operations manager.
My New Favorite Olympian is brought to you by Acura, proud partner of Team USA.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.